Hey everyone, geophysicist Stefan Burns here. We have had a magnitude 6.3 earthquake today in Indonesia at a depth of 10 kilometers. This was about 8 hours ago. Today it's August 12th, 2025. And this means that global seismic activity has reached a high level for the day. But in fact, we are still in a global earthquake watch due to a combination of factors that are all combining together right now. We are in the midst of a high-speed stream impact from the solar wind. Solar wind velocity is about 600 kilometers per second right now. The density has gone down to low levels. This seems to be very well correlated with very powerful earthquakes. We also have a very well charged ionosphere right now. The ionosphere being the uppermost part of Earth's atmosphere, made up of about 1% plasma. Well, when there's a lot of solar flares on the sun, that charges the ionosphere more because of all that excess extreme ultraviolet and X-ray radiation. And with a strong, highly charged ionosphere, you have a very highly charged global electric circuit. We just got out of a long duration G1 storm that actually peaked up to a G2 level for 3 hours, increasing this overall level of energetic volatility across the globe. And we have some powerful planetary resonances at this moment in time. We have Venus conjunct Jupiter, making a strong gravitational vector with the biggest gravity heavyweights in our nearby part of the solar system. If we exclude the sun, this is Venus, a planet just as massive as Earth and also very close to us. And then Jupiter, the biggest planet in the solar system. We also have Mercury stationing right now at this moment in time. And so that's another energetic gravity and perhaps even electromagnetic influence stacked on top of it, because Mercury is embedded in the same solar wind stream that we are being hit with right now here on Earth. So a lot of factors currently at play, but there is a global earthquake watch in effect until some of these things start to dissipate. We could see a big earthquake as a result of this in the next 24, 48, perhaps even 72 hours. I'm thinking magnitude 6.5, even up to magnitude 7 plus. We'll just have to wait and see. But certainly earthquake activity has started to increase now outside of the Kamchatka Peninsula. After that magnitude 8.8 megaquake, we've had most of the high magnitude earthquakes occur in this zone, a lot of magnitude 6 aftershocks. Well, we had that magnitude 6.1 earthquake that hit Turkey about 2 days ago. Now we have this 6.3 earthquake hit Indonesia. Where's the next location? Well, let's try to find out. Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, what we cover is what's happening with the Earth energetically. And to do that, we examine a variety of factors, starting with the Earth itself, earthquakes, volcanic activity, Schumann resonances. We also look at what's happening with the sun, which has a very powerful energetic influence over the Earth. So solar activity like solar flares and coronal holes, and what's happening with the solar wind and the overall modulation of solar activity via solar cycles. Right now we are in solar maximum. We also zoom out, look at the planets, their configuration, so planetary geometry, planetary resonances, and we even go up beyond that and examine interstellar and cosmic forces. We do right now have 3i Atlas zooming through the solar system, and this is a very large electrified comet because it has a coma that's twice the diameter of the Earth. All that is plasma. We'll talk about that more on the channel in the future. I already have a video on that. I'll link that in the video description. That is to say, if you want to stay up to date with what is happening energetically here on Earth and what may be to occur, then please subscribe. Also, just want to bring to your attention the fact that I have a website that sells a variety of all natural holistic wellness products, as well as a little bit of merch now. We have our Boom Shakalaka shirt here. That has been very, very popular over the past week since I launched it. That is the phrase I use when there's something big that happens, boom shakalaka. But also Spirituality, which is an all-time bestseller. It's a dream tea made up of 4 ingredients: mugwort, passion flower, chamomile, purple lotus flower. Herb coffee is also an all-time favorite. Really wonderful coffee blend made up of 50% coffee, also chicory root, dandelion root, and lion's mane mushroom. 12.5% is lion's mane mushroom, all organic. All these tea blends, they're fantastic for you. There are other things too. I wrote a children's book here, One Good Turtle, fantastic. It's about bullying and how you can overcome bullying. Great gift to give to kids or loved ones, even adults enjoy it. I have my holistic gut health guide the solar storm tumbler now. You can drink your coffee like I am out of a double wall stainless steel vacuum insulated tumbler, keeps it hot or cold, and also some artwork from my father here who helps out with the business. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. You can get all this stuff and check it out at earthevolution.com/store. Let's get right into it. Let's begin by looking at our real-time solar wind, because this is one of the most important factors, I think, as it relates to global earthquake activity and these rhythms that we experience here on Earth. And so we're looking at the past 7 days. This is all data collected by the Discover satellite at the L1 Lagrange point, 1% of the distance from the Earth to the Sun. So it gives us about a 1 hour heads up of what type of solar wind conditions are going to sweep by us. Up top, we have our interplanetary magnetic field. We have two different measures, our total field strength, the black line, and then we also have the red line there, the southward component, which is an important variable as it relates to geomagnetic activity, which we see down here with our KP index. So this is a global measure of the swings in Earth's total magnetic field strength, averaged across a whole bunch of magnetometers spread out across the surface. And so it goes from 0 to 9. And when you have values at 5 or greater, you're in a geomagnetic storm. We see that southward component there went negative, and we see that we had this increase in geomagnetic volatility. You notice that we also had this change there in the solar sector that we were in. This is that high-speed stream impact that came in from a very large coronal hole that's been active on the sun for 12 rotations now. These sort of long-lived features on the sun, because they continuously sweep the Earth with unique energetic streams, seem to be connected to the biggest earthquakes. And well, not really surprised that we had that magnitude 8.8 megaquake off the coast of Kamchatka after we had 11 of those rotations from that coronal hole. Well, it hasn't closed up. We're now at rotation 12. It's just now finishing. You'll notice here our solar wind characteristics, density, velocity, temperature. Specifically, let's focus in on the density and the velocity. First, you'll notice that the velocity has increased, showing that high-speed stream coming in. Before it came in, it was very low, just about 340, 330 kilometers per second. The density was hovering around average. It went up as this dense wall of plasma at the front of the high-speed stream swept by. So it went up to about 10 particles per cubic centimeter. But if we go to our one-day view here, you'll see that we are now in conditions that are pretty much perfect for large earthquakes. And so our interplanetary magnetic field is basically nominal, normal values. We see our angle there, 163. That does indicate that we have a good connection to the solar wind, but we see our density there is just about 1. And in fact, it was just below 1 in the past 30 minutes, hour or so. We also see some drops down here. Look at this drop down all the way to 0.1 effectively. Anything 1 or under is quite low, even you could say anomalously low. And you'll notice that our velocity kicked back up after going down to about 500. Now it's back to 600. So we are definitely still embedded in this high-speed stream with low density, which is a classic signature that is connected to high magnitude earthquakes. And what these high velocity, low density solar wind stream to do is pull energy out of the Earth, because there's sort of a vacuum effect. So we know space is no longer a vacuum. Back just 50 years ago, people thought space was a vacuum until we sent probes out there. We actually detected that it's filled with these highly energetic particles. Well, if you have a particle density of 10 per cubic centimeter, that's quite a lot compared to 0.1. And of course, Earth has its own density, and when you remove a lot of that density around, 2 orders of magnitude going from 10 to 0.1, that seems to pull plasma out of the Earth, and plasma moving over a fault zone that's at a critical stress, that could be one explanation, or at least a variable in causing it to rupture. Another thing that is important, though not as well perfectly linked with these powerful earthquakes, is geomagnetic activity. So we see that our activity level was basically normal, and then we had this high-speed stream come in. This is our 10-day look of the KP index. thanks to GFC Potsdam, we see that we went up to a G1 storm. So this is not some mega geomagnetic storm or anything, but it certainly is a change in the amount of energetic volatility across the globe. We went up and now we're kind of going back down. But when you have these fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field, it induces these powerful electric currents all across the global electric circuit. So you get electric currents generated in the ionosphere, which is the uppermost part of Earth's atmosphere, a very important component as it relates to the global electric circuit and also earthquakes. But you also get these powerful electric currents generated in the ground surface below our feet in the crust and deeper. These are known as telluric currents. And so these are also a factor as it relates to these earthquakes and global rhythms of earthquake activity, because if you get a powerful electric current passing over a fault that's at a critical stress that now is interacting with the molecular structure of those minerals and also the high pressure water that exists there and the electrons, and now you're starting to talk about the atomic effects. And if you can get those molecular bonds to break and you get charge transfer, that can cause everything to slip and rupture. And so if you have these powerful telluric currents and you also have corresponding electric currents in the ionosphere and they are resonating together, you create this electric circuit going from the ground surface up to the ionosphere, allowing for this discharge of energy. And we see these powerful ionospheric disturbances before and during powerful earthquakes. Sometimes they can even precede these traveling ionospheric disturbances and electron deficiencies and such. We can see those sometimes even days, weeks, months before, also electromagnetic emissions. But having a geomagnetic storm, just in general, tips things a little bit more towards the potential of there being more earthquake activity, though the correlation is not the strongest. But the ionosphere is a very important component of that, and this sort of solar wind impact or solar storm impact charges the ionosphere. Let's check it out. Here we have a video animation showing our ionosphere, and we see it being charged up by solar radiation there on the daytime side, and then at night we see that it decharges and also shrinks. So this is the uppermost part of the atmosphere. We see it starts around 100 kilometers, though in fact it can actually start even lower down the D region at around 50 kilometers above the surface, and then it goes all the way out to space to the exosphere. But during the daytime side, we see that it's even going up to about 800 to 1,000 kilometers. And this light radiation, this is extreme ultraviolet light, X-ray light. It's very highly vibrational. It's ionizing radiation, which means that it can break molecular bonds, and also it can strip electrons off of either molecules or even elements and cause them to ionize. So for example, hydrogen. Let's just say you have hydrogen. You can have an H plus or just a proton, and now an electron now start to float around and do their own thing. And so when you have more extreme ultraviolet and X-ray radiation coming in from the sun due to variations in that output, you have more plasma generated in the ionosphere. And the more plasma you have, it's now under the influence of electromagnetic fields, whereas a neutral molecule will not interact with, let's say, the magnetic field. And as a result of there being more plasma, they start flowing with these magnetic field changes, generating electric currents that generates more electromagnetic alterations across the globe. So for example, magnetic field swings closer to the surface, which induce those telluric currents I just mentioned. So there's an entire circuit of energy that exists on the globe going all the way out from space down to the core. The very fact that we have a magnetic field being generated in and around the core that extends out into space is evidence of there being energy flow in general throughout the entire planet. But as it relates to earthquake activity, we are most focused on the crust itself. And so a strong ionosphere creates a greater global electric circuit and a potential for earthquakes. And what we also want to see sometimes is that we get the ionosphere to charge up, and it's right when it starts to decharge that we see these increase in earthquakes, and well, that's happening right now. Here we have our Heliotime web portal, which shows us the X-ray flux being picked up by the GOES satellites at geostationary orbit. This is 5.6 Earth radii out. And effectively, they're measuring the amount of X-ray radiation that the sun is blasting out into space. And this is primarily modulated by the solar cycle. We see solar minimums here with these low values. We see solar maximum there with these high values. X-ray flux goes up about 2 to 3 orders of magnitude from solar minimum to solar maximum. So it's one of the most variable parts of the light spectrum of the sun, though it makes up just a small component of total solar irradiance. But it has one of the greatest effects on the global electric circuit because of how it generates plasma in the ionosphere, which is part of that capacitor plate of the global electric circuit. You have the highly conductive ionosphere, the highly conductive surface, and you have the resistive troposphere in between. So here we're seeing our recent X-ray flux, and this is a log scale there. So we see this is 10 to the -6, 10 to the -5, 10 to the -4 watts per square meter. And we had these low values there at the end of June going into July, a bit of an increase there in July. And overall, it kind of settled back down, but it didn't reach these low values. Well, we had our megaquake in Russia right around here. So if I actually zoom out a little bit further, you'll notice that that megaquake came after we had a long period of time with higher X-ray flux and therefore greater ionospheric charging due to solar maximum. And we can actually see that right here. We see that we're starting to come down from our highest values from solar maximum. Though we are still in that will go out probably to the end of 2026, and then we'll enter into that descending phase sometime in 2026. Well, we had this very low period there after we had higher flux, a little bit of an increase, but we clearly had this big charging of the Earth. And then as things started to pull back in terms of solar energy, the Earth then released energy correspondingly. That seems to be the relationship that we see time and time again, because earthquakes are more common, high magnitude earthquakes especially, 7.5 and greater, are most common during the descending and minimum phase of the solar cycle. Well, we just had this big increase in X-ray flux as a result of a lot of solar flares, because we've had some big sunspots on the sun. They've been constantly giving us low to moderate M-class activity, as we see here, a whole bunch of solar flares. Some of them are now rotating out of view, and in general, it doesn't look like there's that many sunspots following behind them. And so I think we're going to continue to get more solar flux to push out and more sunspots in August. But for right now, we are on a bit of a downtrend there. But in general, what this shows is that the global electric circuit is well charged, and we are now starting to kind of enter into a quieter period. Perhaps this is a good time now for the Earth to release some more energy. I'm not expecting another megaquake, though it's certainly possible, like another magnitude 8+ earthquake could happen. I think we're more likely to see magnitude 6.5 and magnitude 7-ish earthquakes in the immediate near future, but it's hard to say precisely. What we do on this channel is more so than track specific locations for earthquakes and specific magnitudes and specific times. It's more just the global rhythms in earthquake activity. That seems to be fairly feasible, whereas these super specific forecasts are difficult. Though we did do that for the magnitude 8.8 megaquake, the 6th strongest earthquake on record. So there is a fairly good track record here. But to keep things simple, global earthquake rhythms are what we look at, and it looks like we are due for some bigger earthquakes now as a result of all these factors that I've outlined. But in addition to that, we had the planetary resonances, so let's check that out. Here we have an application called Solar System Scope, which allows us to see what's happening with the solar system in terms of planetary geometry and the positions and angles of the planets. There is a web app that I've embedded on my Earth Analytics portal on earthevolution.com, so you can check out the link to that in the video description if you want to play with this yourself. You can also purchase the app directly to get the desktop version. Here we see probably the most significant planetary alignment that's active right now at this moment in time in terms of exactness, because we have Venus conjunct Jupiter. And so this, from the geocentric perspective, just looking at the sky, you'll see the two of them together in the night sky. Now, if we look at it from more of a solar system perspective, you see that they have this alignment like this, which means a stronger gravitational vector. And Jupiter is the most massive planet in our solar system, kind of the orchestrator and conductor of the inner solar system as it relates to planetary resonances. A lot of evidence that actually is a strong influence and guide on solar activity. Though, of course, the sun is the main conductor of the solar system. And then we also see Venus there, which is a planet nearly as massive as the Earth and fairly close to the Earth. You will also see Mercury there. Mercury just stationed. So based off of the orbits and the movement of the Earth and Mercury is stationary in the sky at this moment in time. And you'll notice the position of it is effectively embedded in the same solar wind stream that Earth is, because the solar wind spirals out. It's called a Parker spiral. So by being in this location, it is in that solar wind stream, and there are some indications that that is connected to stronger earthquake activity. We especially see that, for example, if I zoom forward here, we especially see that during superior conjunctions, and we also sometimes notice enhanced solar activity during that period of time. So when Mercury performs a cazimi on the other side of the sun, it's known as a superior conjunction, whereas if we go back in time, when it's in between the Earth and the sun, that is an inferior conjunction, but the superior conjunctions really seem linked to some very interesting electric circuit dynamics of the inner solar system, and therefore alterations to solar activity and perhaps even earthquakes. And these sort of inferior conjunctions also seem to be linked to earthquakes, because if we go back to the 29th of July, when we had that megaquake in Kamchatka, Russia, look at that. Oh, Mercury just had an inferior conjunction. So how about that? We were forecasting this on the channel because of all these factors. So today it's August 12th. We have this alignment there, Venus and Jupiter. It's going to take a few days to break. Same with this Mercury embedded in the solar wind alignment. You will also notice that this alignment that we've been discussing quite a lot on the channel, which is Mars, Earth, Saturn, Neptune, is still in effect, though it's starting to break the exact vector, the gravity vector now, but that is a very powerful alignment that is in effect for quite a while. We see Uranus there and Pluto there. They are 120 degrees trine to each other. And so this is a minor grand trine with all these outer planets, because they are both then also Neptune and Saturn equidistant to both of them. So these are 60-degree angles, and Mars completes the kite configuration. So some really powerful planetary resonances that have been active for a couple weeks now and are still active. And in some aspects, they are most exact today because of this Venus and Jupiter alignment. Whereas back when that kite was most active on the 9th of August, they were still a little bit more broken up. And you can see that right here. If we go back to the 9th, we see that that alignment is not perfect. And I think this is a very significant alignment here. So we also have these powerful planetary resonances, and the biggest gravitational influences on the Earth are, of course, are the sun and the moon, and there is a connection to increase earthquake activity during new moons and full moons. In general, the moon seems to cause about a 0.5 to 1% modulation of global seismicity. Though when we look at the highest magnitude earthquakes, the moon is often in a new moon or even more so a full moon position. Something to keep in mind, it's not just gravity, right? The electromagnetic forces 10 to 36 times more powerful than gravity. And so when you have the moon here in a full moon position, it's also an Earth's magnetic field, because the magnetic field stretches out behind the planet in a magnetotail. And this creates some very interesting plasma dynamics, because the moon builds up this very powerful positive charge on the sunlit side and a negative charge on the nighttime side, effectively becoming this big electric field gradient. And now it moves through the magnetotail, where some of the most highly vibrational plasma in Earth's magnetic field is stored. And so there are these electromagnetic connections too as a result of these planetary alignments. But though the gravitational forces compared to the sun and moon are not that strong due to how it drops off at the inverse square law, they are still not zero. And it's a difference as compared to when things are a little bit more random and less orderly. So though the forces may be, you could say, minor, that doesn't mean they are insignificant. What the significance level is remains to be determined. This is a fairly new field of research, though it does go back some time, but a lot of people and just mainstream scientists just have kind of discounted this completely and don't think anything of it. But time will prove that this is certainly a factor, and one important factor, not the only one, but important factor as it relates to what's happening energetically here on Earth. And one of the most important things energetically with the Earth is earthquakes. So these planetary resonances are active, and just in general, because of all these factors I've outlined, the high-speed stream of the solar wind with the very low particle density right now, the well-charged ionosphere, the fact that we just got out of a long-duration G1 storm that even spiked to a G2 level, these planetary alignments, all that is leading me to think that we have a much higher probability of there being high magnitude earthquake activity for the next 72 hours or so. We had that magnitude 6.3 in Indonesia today. I'm not sure that's really it though. I think we have at least a magnitude 6.5 or magnitude 7 and greater earthquake that's going to occur in the next 72 hours, but we'll wait and see. At least that is my probabilistic forecast for you. So then the final question is, where may we see this high magnitude earthquake? And that depends on a couple factors. It depends on which faults are at their critical stress threshold and just need a little bit of a push to then eventually rupture. It also depends on overall plate tectonics and the dynamic forces that are at play. When you just had a big shift in these forces as a result of this 8.8 megaquake, those plates moved apart quite significantly, like multiple meters. So that has changed the stress dynamics across the entire Pacific plate. We saw changes on Kamchatka Peninsula itself from that megaquake. We had Kluchevskoye volcano that's starting to erupt now basically continuously, though it already was the most active volcano there. We had Krashenikov volcano wake up first time in 600 years. So clearly showing a link between earthquake activity and volcanic activity. Because if you have a very high power seismic wave passing through a magma chamber, it's highly pressurized, that's going to disturb it and cause there to be changes. We also saw that further afield with Hawaii, with the biggest eruption yet at Kilauea for episode 30. It was delayed after that 8.8 megaquake, and then when it finally did erupt, it was the biggest thus far. But here we have our USGS map set for all earthquakes magnitude 6 or greater for the year 2025 up to today, August 12th. And so we can also just look at where there have been earthquakes and where there haven't been. And so we see a lot of earthquakes here on the western side of the Pacific, all across this part of the Ring of Fire. And that makes sense because the Ring of Fire is very, very active, but it's not just there. We also have the Ring of Fire going over to the eastern Pacific. So before we get there, we don't see any magnitude 6 earthquakes or greater in this zone. So I do think this is a potential location for a powerful earthquake in the near future. We also see a deficiency of earthquakes down here along this subduction zone, which gets very powerful earthquakes. This is the location of that magnitude 9 in 2004, the Great Sumatra earthquake. And in general, we know that the Alpine Fault is due in New Zealand, and it has about a 300-year reoccurrence interval, and the last one was 1717, so more than 300 years ago. So that has a magnitude 8 potential, and it's kind of a countdown clock now on the Alpine Fault. But if we go over to the Eastern Pacific, South America is one of the most seismically active zones in the world, the site of the magnitude 9.5 earthquake, 1960, the most powerful earthquake ever observed. And we do notice some earthquakes right here at that bend, which is where you get those really powerful earthquakes, but also a gap there and a large gap there. So that's a zone of potential. And of course, as a lot of people like to focus on the North America, very few earthquakes in this zone just in general. No magnitude 6s at all in 2025, going up the San Andreas through the Cascadia subduction zone, even getting into Alaska. You have to go over here before you get that magnitude 7.3 that struck on the 16th of July. That was before that megaquake in Russia. So this is also definitely a potential zone. A lot of those faults are effectively ready, locked and loaded. They are due. I did an update on zones of highest seismic risk in California. And effectively, to really boil it down, it's these two areas where the San Andreas bends. They have the longest recurrence interval, but also the highest magnitude potential. And so you can get magnitude 8s on the San Andreas. You have the Fort Tejon earthquake, that was 1857, a magnitude 7.9. Also the San Francisco earthquake, 1906, also magnitude 7.9. Those two ruptured those sections, and they were the last ones to do so in a significant way. So a lot of faults in the Bay Area that are locked and loaded: Hayward Fault, Calaveras Fault, more, and then also down here in SoCal. Last time we had some big earthquakes was quite a while ago. I mean, 1800 for like San Diego area, 1812 for this area, if we're talking magnitude 7 and greater, though there were some others kind of nearby, but like specifically in these populated areas, it's been a while. So that's also zone. And then we can't forget we have all these faults and plate boundaries running through Eurasia. So India and the Himalayas, certainly. We see this one right there, magnitude 7.1. That was on the 7th of January, so that's a big earthquake. But for example, further over here, we don't really have much. And also going through Iran, that could give us a very big earthquake. We've been having magnitude 5 activity in Iran, but nothing big yet. That's certainly possible. And these are all zones to watch. We could also get more activity down here in Drake's Passage and some other zones across the globe. Maybe, we've been having elevated activity in Tonga and around Fiji, Samoa. So it's possible that we get a big earthquake there, magnitude 7 or greater. But really, it's hard to forecast specific locations, but I do think it's worthwhile to look at the zones that haven't ruptured and to just pay a little bit more attention to them. A magnitude 6 earthquake is not dissipating any energy if it actually has a magnitude 8 potential, for example, because that's going to be 1,000 times less energy released for a magnitude 6 than a magnitude 8. So it's really not doing much, but it could give you an indication of what is going to occur if it's a foreshock and part of a foreshock sequence. But often with big earthquakes, we don't get foreshocks. We just get the big one. So a lot of different variables to look at as it relates to this, but in general, as I've said, we are in a global seismic earthquake watch right now at this moment in time. I'll keep you up to date with what is happening, so please subscribe to the channel. And again, you can check out all the holistic wellness offerings that I have and merchandise at earthevolution.com. The earthing shoes, sandals, and boots I sell are available at wildfreeorganic.com. So you can check those out, linked in the video description. I'll be back with more for you. So again, thank you so much for watching. Smash that like button, help the channel grow. We are nearly at 400,000 subscribers. So thank you all so much for your support. The road to 500K begins very soon. I'll be back with more. Wishing all of you well. Please take care of yourselves. I'll see you all in the next video.